Okay, thank you, Kyron. Let's go into the reports. All right, so these are just the end of year one reports, and you can see a whole page is filled up and another page. So the purpose of these slides is to kind of communicate the report relationships. The aggregate reports, those that are teal or green, uh, depending on your perspective, are those that provide counts. This is the product of end of year. This is the product of your submission. These are the counts the CDE and the federal government will use. The actual detail, the students that are comprising those counts are going to be displayed in the supporting reports. You can argue that the supporting reports should have more value to each of you as LEA data coordinators than the aggregate counts. Of course, the aggregate counts are required to be certified by functionality in CALPADS, but I'm just trying to impress upon you the importance of reviewing not just the aggregate counts, but those supporting reports as well. This provides me an opportunity to point out that new to end of year one is report 16.27 and 16.28, students with disabilities completer and dropout count, and the student list that is associated to those aggregate counts. These reports are newly being implemented for the 25-26 academic year. Another change with the consolidation of end of year into end of year one. Previously, each submission had its own report roles, allowing you to delegate who can see what reports. Now, all the report roles for both end of year one and end of year two are a single role. So that means anyone with end of year reports can view all the reports for end of year one and end of year two. So your CTE coordinator will be able to look at end of year one data. Your special education coordinator will be able to look at end of year two data. The big takeaway is make sure everyone has the end of year report role who needs to review any data related to end of year. All right, so the first report we're going to look at is report 5.1 program participations count. Like most reports, this report is unchanged. It features all those so-called end of year programs we used to call them participation programs, but they are those that are collected and counted and represented in this submission cycle. Column 10, Title 1, Part A, school-wide, will not come from the result of a program record. Notice there is no program record code associated in the title. Those, as Kyron explained when he was covering Cert 97, are going to be identified in CARs. Those schools operating school-wide programs will have their entire enrollment represented in the counts. Report 5.4, homeless students enrolled, is a count of all the homeless students reported during the academic year. This is a little bit different than those homeless students that were homeless over Census Day and represented in Report 1.17 or 1.18. A student that had a period of homelessness at any time during the academic year will be counted in this report. Report 19.1 is a new report for the expanded learning programs. This report is going to show you the count of the students who have participated in the expanded learning program. Remember, they would have had to at least generate 1 day of program participation. You may report more students who are enrolled, but these are the students who have participated. They have at least 1 day reported. Report 1.21, cumulative enrollment, will show you a view of all the students who are enrolled during the academic year with a primary, secondary, or short-term enrollment status. Remember, the cumulative enrollment is the basis for all the CDE rates: graduation rate, dropout rate, suspension rate, chronic absenteeism rate, stability rate. All of the rates that communicate the successes or failures of your LEA are based on the cumulative enrollment count. Report 2.16, English language acquisition status, ELs reclassified. This is your RFEP report. So any student that was RFEP'd between July 1 and June 30th in the academic year will be counted on this report, so long as their status date corresponds within a period of enrollment. So remember, your summer RFEPs have to have a reclassified date within an enrollment period. Report 7.10 or 710, incident count. This is a count of all your incidents. It also shows the results. Report 711, incident result count. So this is a count of just the results. So remember, the count of incidents, students may have multiple results for an incident, but we're counting incidents in 710. In 711, we're focused on the results, not the incident. So a student, you may have 5 incidents and 7 results. Report 7.12, incident results student list. So this is the detail report that supports 710 and 711. And this is a report that provides the information your LEA would need. So if you look at this screenshot, you can see under incident result, you have a list of the incident results. And it's by code. So every result and every code. If you export this report in Excel and filter this column, you can filter all the suspensions, the out-of-school suspensions, the in-school suspensions. That's how you can derive the number of suspensions for the year. You can do that with expulsions or any other result. We don't have a report that says there were 15 suspensions this year or 21 suspensions this year. You have to use the report and manipulate the information to suit your needs. That's how you can do it. Report 7.13, student offense count by offense. So again, we're not looking at the incidents or the result, we're focusing on the offense. So every offense code is listed for each offense and they're categorized. So brandishing a knife, these are some violent offenses. I was looking for something a little bit less scary, but um, you can see that every school has each offense listed. There's a summary at the top for all schools, and then you can look at each individual school and each individual offense that has been reported. If they used a weapon, the weapon they used will have a count as well. So um, if they use a gun, a handgun, a rifle, a different type of firearm, a different type of weapon like a knife, if they use multiple weapons. And then report 7.14, incident offense student list. Report 7.14, incident offense student list. So this is the supporting report for 7.13. It's going to provide you a list of all the offenses by student. Again, a student may have multiple offenses for any single incident. So this is just a count of those different offenses and displayed by code. Report 7.15, incident results persistently dangerous expulsion. So those violent offenses, they can translate into your school being labeled as persistently dangerous. And based on your student population and the number of violent offenses, your school can be identified as at risk of being potentially dangerous. And so you can see those more violent offenses listed at the top. Report 7.16, incidents, restraints, seclusion, and removals for students with disabilities. So this is why it's important to include your special ed data coordinator and your SELPA in the incident submission. They might have to provide you information from your NPS schools. They might have identified students who are removed from the classroom due to disciplinary reasons or special ed placement, right? So you want to make sure you account for all the discipline that your students with disabilities receive, any incidents that they may be engaged in. It could be a behavioral incident. You always want to identify that it may not be, you always want to identify all the incidents. The authoritative source may not be your student information system. You may have to get this data from your special education system, or even, like I said, your MPS schools. Report 7.17, unilateral removals for students with disabilities. Again, just emphasizing the importance of allowing access and to reviewing your reports for your special education data coordinator, as well as involving them into the submission or data collection. So report 7.17 shows the count of removals for specifically students with disability. If it shows if they were removed to an interim alternative setting, who removed them, the number of students removed, um, drug-related offenses, weapon-related offenses, violent physical injury offenses. And then the last report specific to students with disabilities is report 7.18, incident removals for students with disabilities student list. This supports those other two reports. It identifies the student by name, school of enrollment, demographics. So again, when you're thinking of disproportionality in terms of students with disability and far as discipline, right? You want to make sure that your students with disability are disciplined at a rate that's on par with your other students. And if they're not, this report can help identify that and maybe bring change. It can identify that and possibly bring change, at least attention to any incidents or any disproportionality occurring to students. All right, moving on to report 14.1, student absenteeism count. This report identifies those students who are identified as chronically absent. Remember, that is a dashboard indicator. We've added a column for attendance recovery days. Remember, this does not factor into your absenteeism rate. So if you have a student who is absent more than 10% of the time, so they have 100 expected days of enrollment and they miss 20, or let's say they miss 19 of those days and they recover 10, they're still going to be counted for all 19 days, which is closer to 20% than 10, less than 10%. They're going to be identified as chronically absent. All right. So here we have report 16.12, students with disabilities education plan by primary disability count. This report is part of fall one, and we only look at students with active plans in fall one. This report provides us a list of those students with active plans, of course, but for the entire year, not just those who were there on census day. And so remember, IDEA requires us to provide cumulative counts of all students receiving special education service during the year. This information is also used to monitor whether students are receiving free and appropriate public education, otherwise known as FAPE, and identify if students are in the least restrictive environment. Report 16.14, students with disabilities planned by student list. This is just a list of all those students in report 16.12. It helps you identify the details of their plan and services. And so here we have 16.22, students with disabilities non-participation status count. Here we're taking information from the students with disability status and using that to show those students who have left special education at any point during the academic year. Remember, IDEA requires that information, those students who have left special education or have been found ineligible during the academic year. So that's the purpose of this report. And the supporting report for 1622, of course, is 1623, students with disability special education status and non-participation reason student list. And we have here all those columns of information of why the student left, their status, their enrollment start date, their enrollment exit date, their withdrawal date. Sometimes students may leave special education due to graduation, Lord forbid death. It may happen, real life circumstances. And so this report includes both the status information and the enrollment and withdrawal information as well. Report 17.4, post-secondary status list. This is The supporting report for the PSTS, and of course, report 17.3 would be the aggregate report providing the counts that are supported by this report. And 17.4 will identifies those students that were in the aggregate counts. Remember, a student may have more than one status result, so a single student may have multiple post-secondary status records. And now we have the 1-year students with disability completer and dropout collection. Report 16.27 is the count and 16.28 is the student list. This report is a bit unique. In one, it's specific to students with disabilities, but two, the time frame is different from your other 1-year graduate and dropout counts. That's why it has its own report. It's just the academic year. Summer grads, that cycle is not part of this. You see the note for report period 7/1 to 6/30. So it's just those students who graduated or drop out between 7/1 and 6/30.